Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Rahul Soni and I am Program Director at TCS IN Direct Academy channel. I welcome you all to the Entrepreneurship Talk Show. Today we have very special guest, Mr. Pawan Soni, who is an innovation evangelist by profession and a teacher by passion. He is the founder of Inflection Point, offering programs on design thinking. In this session, he will surely answer all questions related to challenges in entrepreneurship, aspects of design thinking, and also will share about his overall journey so far, which will definitely motivate us. So let's begin the show with overview of the topic. An entrepreneur is an agent of change. Entrepreneurship is the process of discovering new ways of combining resources. When the market value generated by this new combination of resources is greater than the market value these resources can generate elsewhere individually or in some other combination. A vibrant, growing economy depends on the efficiency of the process by which new ideas are quickly discovered, acted on, and labeled as successes or failures. So before starting the show, I must give the introduction of our guest speaker, Dr. Pawan Soni, the founder of Inflection Point, offering programs on design thinking, strategic acumen, and consulting skills. He is the author of the book Design Your Thinking, published by Penguin Random House in 2020. Apart from being an adjunct faculty at ISB Hyderabad and IIM Bangalore, Dr. Pawan is a columnist at Mint, Your Story, INC 42, Entrepreneur, and a People Matters. Pawan was the only Indian to be shortlisted for the prestigious FT and Mackenzie Bracken Boer Award for the Best Business Book of the Year 2016. He has been invited 5 times to speak at the TEDx and is featured as one of the 100 digital influencers of 2020 by Your Story. Dr. Pawan is a gold medalist from MBM Engineering College and did his PGDIE from NITIE Mumbai. He finished his doctoral studies from IIM Bangalore in the domain of innovation management. So it's my pleasure and honor to welcome Dr. Pawan Soni. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much, Rahul, for having me here. Appreciate that.
Thank you. So, first of all, I would like to ask you and start the show with this question. Please tell us about your life, your career, and how you got into entrepreneurship, your overall journey so far. Please share about some of the initial struggles you faced when you started this journey.
So I did my engineering from MBM Engineering College, Jodhpur. I finished that in the year 2003. And soon after that, I got to do my MBA program. It was actually a PGDIE program from NITI Mumbai. So I didn't have any work experience before doing my MBA program. And the turning point of my career was actually when I was doing this program of mine, which was at NITI Mumbai. And that I sat through a program on entrepreneurship and technology management. So actually the whole process and the thought of innovation management, technology management, entrepreneurship was sown in my mind in 2005. But I had to work to really see if I'm cut out to be an entrepreneur, if I really want to do something independent. And then I joined Wipro Technologies. So I was campus placed into Wipro in 2005. But interestingly, at NITI, they had this concept called winter internship programs. So unlike in other B schools that have summer internships for 2 months, NITI also had 2 months of summer internship plus 4 months of winter internship. So starting January till about April, May, you are supposed to be in an organization. And I went to Wipro and I said that I want 4 months of internship with you. And Wipro said that we cannot advance your joining date to January. You have to join us only in the month of May and June. So you have to figure out somewhere else where you can do internship program. And that's where I started talking to my alumni network at NITI. And fortunately, I got a chance to work at Titan. Now, when I joined Titan as a sort of winter intern, I was assigned into a team that was building up the innovation framework for Titan, the innovation process framework for the watches division of Titan. And as a part of that framework, I had to go around, talk to multiple people, visit multiple organizations, travel, read extensively about innovation. And within those 4 months, I really got into the space of innovation very much. So much so that I eventually presented the entire plan to the managing director of Titan, Mr. Bhaskar Bhatt, and the entire governing council, which was the high moment of my life. And that's where I got kicked into the space of innovation. Wipro, I was involved in the process of managing innovation workshops with the Wipro's internal teams, clients, and somewhere I realized that if I have to really make myself authority in the space of innovation management and technology management, I must do a PhD program. That's where I wrote my entrance exams for the PhD program. And in 2011, after spending 6 years as a pro, I resigned from the company, joined IIM Bangalore for the PhD program. And once again, I think I was lucky enough to get into IIM Bangalore because I was in Bangalore all this while. Leaving the city would have been very difficult for me. Joined IIM Bangalore, wrote my thesis on innovation culture. And in the middle of my thesis, it dawned upon me that maybe with adequate work experience, with enough research background, with the right kind of pedigree, NITI, IIM Bangalore, and in the city of Bangalore, if I don't start a company in this age, in this city, with so much of a qualification, then I think when? Now is the time to take a risk. And that's where I decided to start my company. So I actually started my company when I was doing my PhD program at IIM Bangalore. So I did not really take too much of a risk. My risk actually, Rahul, was covered because I already had a PhD and I knew for a fact that if things don't work out, that I can always go back and sort of continue with my teaching work, or if the teaching doesn't work out, I can always go back to the industry and continue to work. So I think what I want to communicate with this storyline is the fact that while we think entrepreneurship is about taking risk, but the entrepreneur who are successful, they are always able to manage risk. Because like we say, beauty is in the eyes of beholders. Similarly, risk is also in the eyes of beholders. To somebody else, my behavior might look very risky, but in my own mind, I'd covered that risk with the right kind of educational qualification, with the right kind of network which I had, the right backing which I could have, equally financially backing. And that's where I could take the courage of starting the company. And by the grace of God,
Dr. Soni, it was inspiring and motivating to know about your life, about your career, about your journey, how far you have started, and then you got the job, and afterwards you joined organizations. So you said that the innovation is the key, and it it to entrepreneurship very much. So please throw some light on what is design thinking and how is it relevant to entrepreneurship.
sure, that's a good question. So before I go into this, it's a good idea for me to introduce my new audience. So here is my book. It's called Design Your Thinking. It's been published in December 2020 by Simon Random House. And in this particular book, what I have tried to do is to give an overview to my readers on how design thinking can be practiced by almost anybody on a day-to-day basis. Now, India, I think the biggest source of employment for India is entrepreneurship, right? Then comes agriculture. If you look at all the mom and pop stores across the country, the kirana stores, the people who are street hawkers, they're all self-employed. So self-employment is the way we have been running as a country for many, many years now. But there is a difference between the kind of entrepreneurship that we are talking about and a panwala shop or a street corner shop. The difference is scale. A panwala shop may not be able to scale beyond that panwala shop. He'll start with the panwala shop and he will end with a panwala shop. Or a kirana store will start with that small kirana store and will continue doing so. That company is not able to scale up. So if you have to really scale up, you need to define a unique recipe, something which is unique to your organization, which is not very, very easy to copy. And that is where creativity and innovation will come into play. Let me give you a couple of examples on how design thinking can be used to scale up your enterprise. Simple example is a Bangalore-based company called ID Fresh Food. Now, Mustafa and his cousins started this company in late 2010, late 2000s. And the idea of this company was to sell idli dosa batter. Now, in South India, people usually prepare their idli dosa batter at home and others buy from outside. But then what they buy is not really prepared in a very hygienic place. So they discovered this very latent need in the marketplace of giving idli dosa batter to all the people. And then people started using it and they started putting a factory in Bangalore somewhere, a significantly big factory, started exporting this to other countries, especially to Dubai and Middle Eastern countries where there's a lot of Kerala population, Malayali population, which is there. And then it became spread across the country. They further innovated in decoction, the coffee decoction in a pouch, which was pretty new, the vada maker, and henceforth and so on. So the idea there was that how do I really look at a latent need of a customer and address that in a hygienic, sustainable manner. If I look at another example, this time it comes from North India, and there is a company called Hectare Foods, and the product is called Paper Boat. Now we had these big companies like Tropicana, and all these big players, Dabur, ITC, etc., selling fruit juices, Fruity from Parle G, which is so all of these guys were selling juices. But then Hectare Fruits, which is your paper boat, came up with a latent need in the customer of giving genuinely Indian flavors like Aam Panna, Khatta, Jaljeera. Now, a Tropicana sitting in the US cannot think of Aam Panna or a Jaljeera because for them, juice is apple juice, orange juice, but an Indian flavor. And the whole anchoring of this thing was on, living your childhood memories. Right? Nostalgia was the whole premise. So if you look at entrepreneurs who have really made it big in this current generation or the current era, they are the people who have been really able to identify a latent need of the customer, and need that the customer is not able to express freely. Even if I go and talk to people in an interview or a survey, they may not be able to tell me those needs because they don't even think that these needs can be addressed. But yes, we can. And I can go on and on talking about lots of very interesting case studies from India itself where entrepreneurs have adopted the principles of design thinking. So I think one of the core principles that we can adopt here, Rahul, is the fact that how do we understand the need of the customer when the customer herself does not understand the need. That is what design thinking can lend to entrepreneurship.
Thanks, Dr. Pawan, for explaining what is design thinking. And you have given a couple of examples which will definitely and surely explain all the things. So, but when we talk about entrepreneurship, the main challenge is about the finance. So, my next question is related to same only. So, one of the biggest roadblocks for any new startup in the financials is the financials. So, how should one manage and plan for the same? And what are the various avenues in today's world to arrange these finances?
Sure. So, there are three stages in which you can look at the financing journey. The first stage is called the 3F stage. 3F means family, friends, and fools. Somebody call them as fools, the people who are foolish enough to invest into your venture. So most startups typically start with self-funding or the 3F, family, friends, and fools. Okay? Once you have that kind of launch pad prepared for you, then you can look at angel investors. Now, what are the angel investors? Angel investors are the people who are reasonably rich, that they have met their ends, they have secured their life, they have enough property, now they have disposable cash or disposable money, and they have invested into a startup, not a very big amount, which may be less than ₹1 crore, for example. They want to invest in a company and see if the returns can double or triple or go extra. They're called angel investors. They're individual people who have cash or money with them, but they're willing to invest. Now, why will an angel investor be interested in you? He or she will be interested in you if you can strike a chord with that person. For example, Azim Premji. Azim Premji invested in this company called ID Fresh Food, again the idli dosa butter making company. Or they invested in this company called Subhiksha, which was into grocery selling, etc. And a lot of other companies they invested into. Now, he did because he called with that company that this is doing something very interesting, so let me invest. So you have to identify those people who are rich enough, but at the same time, if their cause is education and if your startup is in education, go and there. Okay. For example, Mr. Nandan Nilekani is very big on education. He stays in Bangalore and he does a lot of funding, so you can go and talk to him. Incidentally, it so happens that some of these people are very, very much also accessible. You would not believe, Rahul, that every evening when I go for my evening walks, I meet Mr. Nilekani. So we often cross. Ashok Soota, Subrata Patri, a lot of people are around, Kiran Majumdar Shaw, etc. So these are people who are not running large enterprises on money, but they are looking for the right kind of connection to happen. So one is your self-funding, second is family and friends, third is angel investors. When these angel investors give money to you, you can also use their network, use their brand, saying that, hey, Nandan Nilekani invested in me, or Azim Premji invested in me, or some of those people, they invested in me, and the investment can be of couple of lakh rupees. That's absolutely fine. And these people are okay if you don't pay them the returns very quickly. They're okay with that. But that gives you a lot of credibility, a lot of legitimacy. The next is the venture capital, VC space. Now you should not approach the venture capitalist very quickly, because what they would be looking at is they would want to understand the cash flow. They would like to understand the profits that your company makes, the sustainable model of your organization. And if you go too early in them, then you might end up diluting too much of your stake in the company at a very throwaway price. But if you go late in the organizational growth, then maybe you will be in a better negotiation power. Then you can raise debt. Debt means loan from bank or from other institutions, and there are people who are ready to give a debt also. Difference between debt and equity for our audience is that in equity what happens is when you take money from the company, you don't have to pay interest, but you have to pay a portion of your company ownership. So you share the ownership of the company with the person who is giving you equity. Whereas when you take it, it's like any loan at whatever percentage, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15%, in the personal loan also, where the company's ownership does not get diluted. Whereas what you are paying is you are paying the interest along with the principal amount to the. Now that they need a pledge, they need some sort of a mortgage, some security, correct? Now as a startup, you don't have any security. The only security is your personal security. So usually startups don't get debt funding very easily. Now once you have somebody in your board, some big name in your board, some venture funding is there, then you can raise debt. And the ultimate thing that can happen to a startup is IPO, initial public offering. IPO is when you go out in the marketplace and get your company listed. For example, company that Yatra is one company that got listed and they have done pretty well. Another company is Happiest Minds, which was started almost 10 years back, that got listed. Indian market is opening up to more and more listing of the company. So just to summarize, the stages would be: first is self-funding, second is family and friends, the third is angel investors, the fourth is venture capitalists, the fifth is debt funding, and the last is IPO, initial public offering. So that is how you can chalk your financial journey.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Soni, for showcasing about what are the avenues which we have. So, Dr. Soni, I want to know from you that equally big challenge for a startup is having the right team and the right mix of talent. So, what is your opinion about this?
Yeah, that's an important question, because when you want to scale a company, you need to have people who are complementary to you. What happens when you start a company is that typically you start with a lot of passion and you start in an area which is your strength. Now, somebody may be good at marketing but may not be good in product development. Somebody may be good in product development but not good in sales. Somebody may be good in all these areas but very bad in finance. Somebody may be bad in leadership qualities, etc., etc. So as you want to grow your organization, you need to bring people who have complementary skill sets, who are not like you, who are different from you. But to also get people who are different from you is not very easy, because you may have a lot of friction, you may have a lot of conflict. So I think there are three general rules of scaling a company in terms of getting to the right set of people. The first thing which you need to identify is that try and see if you can be passionate about what you are trying to do. If the only reason somebody is willing to work for your company is money and more money, then this person would definitely leave you if there is a better opportunity monetarily available somewhere else. So if you can share the passion with the rest of your team, then they will be willing to put that extra effort, willing to stay a little longer, willing to let go financial gains because they want to create something bigger. Now, how do you do that? Suppose you are interested in giving better healthcare services to people in your city. Then try to find people who have a passion towards healthcare. Suppose you want to create a chain of gyms or fitness centers in your city. Try to talk to people who have a passion towards fitness, because they will not only contribute intellectually, but they can also contribute physically by their own personalities, by their own character and build. They can possibly contribute. If you are wanting to get into something education, try to talk to people who are into education and who are excited about the whole prospect of education as an enterprise. So that's one very important thing, and that's what we say, that they have to have complementary skill sets but converged thought process, that they should be passionate about the same area. And many times getting those passionate people is not very easy. You have to talk to a lot of people, you have to make your voice heard, And that's where I always suggest that entrepreneurs should be vocal. If you have a passion in that area, then you should write about it, talk about it, so they can attract people who would like to work with you towards that area. That's the first thing. The second thing is, should you look at qualification and skill sets, or should you look at attitude? And I strongly believe that skills can be cultivated, skills can be enhanced, and what we're trying to do with this program is primarily doing that, isn't it? We're trying to enhance people's skills. That's what TCS Ion program tries to do. But attitude is something that cannot be. A person has pretty much a fixed attitude towards life. Now, what I mean by attitude is that there are set of people who would always want to be told what is to be done. That okay, go there, then do these 5 things, and then come back and report it to me. And they are clueless when the guidance is not there. They are not the right set of people who you would like to get into your organization very early on, because they will always look towards you for guidance, and as a result your own bandwidth will get choked, and you will start thinking that if I have to tell you what needs to be done, then why shouldn't I do it myself? I want your own initiative, I want your own creativity. And that's the attitude which I'm looking at. An attitude of taking risk, an attitude of being comfortable with ambiguity, an attitude of not asking clarification at every stage of the journey. That is the important thing. So that's the second thing. So the first thing is passion towards your area of interest. The person's passion and your passion should converge. Second thing is an attitude of being comfortable in ambiguity, leading in darkness, right? Not seeking clarification every time, and being okay to take the risk, going out, learning on your own. And the third important thing, which might be very useful to you, is how do we develop a sense of ethics and integrity in it? Now, this we often take for granted, but we have seen so many startups going down because the moment cash starts to come in, people integrity starts to get diluted. They are unable to manage cash rightly. They're unable to take the right decisions. They get lured into a short circuit and a quick fix kind of a mentality. And that's what we need to avoid. Now, how do you test people on integrity? There are lots of ways in which you can test people in integrity. In interviews, giving them some situations, how do they respond, looking at their track record, etc. But I think giving too much of emphasis on the scores, marks, academic qualifications may not be the wise thing to do. Because I believe that more than the academic qualifications, what matter is the person honest, effort, and does the person have the passion towards what I'm trying to do? Only then the person will be really helping you shoulder to shoulder to navigate through the difficult times. And once your company becomes large, then you can always put those parameters at 75% plus in exams, etc., etc. Because you need people who can work, follow orders. And the people who actually score very good in academics are those who can take orders and work very diligently. I think at different stages of the company, you need to hire differently. That's my view.
So thanks, Dr. Soni, for explaining about the challenges which generally entrepreneurs face. And you said very importantly that skills can be cultivated and can be improved depending on the time and the culture. So, but if we talk about more challenges from your side, can you please highlight on what are the immense challenges to the enthusiastic beginners, and what are the risks involved and how they can mitigate them?
Yeah. So when you are trying to one of the big challenges is to remain focused. It's very easy to get attracted to opportunities that might come to you, but to say no is very, very important, because I've seen many a times you take up a project that sucks a lot of your energy and time away and does not give you much in return. It happens with me also. Many times I end up taking up assignments or projects that are not too much value adding to me, and as a result I always think that I would have been better off saying no than committing for this thing. But you often are so much of a financial pressure that you are pushed to say no because you need money, correct? You need money. You need to survive for one more year, one more quarter, because unlike people working in corporate, there is no paycheck which is coming to you at the end of the month. So in that pressure, in that sort of a compulsion or desperation, you end up taking wrong decisions. Now, I can't blame people because you need money, frankly speaking. But if you can take a step back and ask yourself this question, that if I take this assignment, or if I serve this client, or if I go to this market or develop this product or service, will I be able to sell it uniquely? And that's what I mean by focus. Remaining focused is very, very critical. Saying no to people who are suboptimal, saying no to the projects which are not adding value to you, saying no to assignments that might suck a lot of value and time out of you but doesn't give you much of a return. That's the first thing which is very difficult, to say no and to remain focused. The second thing is, how do you really select the right set of people? At the start of a company, you are too vulnerable in a position to survive wrong hires. In a large company, people can come and go, like a TCS, which is a huge organization. It has more than 3 lakh employees. With more than 3 lakh employees, if some of the people who are not top performers come to your company, the company does not start collapsing. But if you're just a 10-member team and 2 people out of that 10 member are not really putting their best effort, then the whole company starts to collapse. And as a result, you as a leader need to be very, very careful about the kind of people you hire. Once again, in desperation, and you want to show to your investors or show to your customers that you have a bigger team, you end up hiring a lot of people very quickly. But when you start firing them, it's a very painful process, not only for you and your team, but also for the person who's going out. So I think you need to be steady and little slow. I never think that, the saying is that because nobody's waiting for you to start a company except you can as well delay it, right? Nobody's waiting for you to start a company. It's your objective to start a company, but nobody's putting the pressure on you. So you can as well take it slow and delay. So wrong hire can be another important thing. And the third is, how do you conserve cash? Managing cash. Now, I'm a Marwadi, and Marwadis by design are very, very frugal. The reason Marwadis turn out to be very good business people historically also is because in Marwadi, in Hindi, there is a kahavat, कि जितनी चादर उतने पैर पसारी है, that you should only stretch your limbs to the extent to which you have the blanket. So you have to understand your means, and then only you have to look at your expenses. So being conservative with finance is very, very important. Okay, managing your cash flow so that you can meet your obligation in terms of rentals, the salary that you need to give to your people, your own commitments, etc. So being prudent about finance, saying no to opportunities that are not adding value to you, and being very careful about associating people with your organization can be 3 very difficult things for an early stage startup that one needs to be very mindful of.
So thanks, Dr. Soni, once again for highlighting the risk and the challenges involved in the entrepreneurship journey. So my next question is related to innovation and ideation. So as we all know that you are innovation evangelist, and so we want to know from you that how do we scale up the enterprise? How innovation and ideation is important?
Yeah. So once again, I'll break my answer into 3 specific responses. I usually like to stick to the 3 number because it is easy to remember, easy to recall, and easy to also explain. The first thing is, try to see if you can make processes and systems that can take your place. Very recently, Jeff Bezos, the richest man in the world and the founder of Amazon, has decided to step down from Amazon. Now, it's not that he is very old, that he cannot manage, but the reason he's chosen to step down from day-to-day operations and he is giving a role to Andy Jassy, who is a long timer at Amazon, is because he has made systems and processes in such a way that they can run the company in his absence. That's very important. What happens to a startup is that if you go to office, things are fantastic, but if you take a leave one day, things start to crumble. If you're not feeling well, if you're sick for 1 week, things might just kind of get distorted or destroyed. That should not happen. Which means that from a personality-driven, cult-driven, or a person-driven kind of a company, you have to make it process-driven company. Get processes, make systems, make rules so that people are not confused. That if Rahul sir says, then it happens. If Rahul sir is absent, nobody knows what happens. That should not happen. You need to have processes in place. That's one thing which you need to develop to kind of scale the organization. That's the first thing. The second thing is articulation of your objective. The founder of LinkedIn, Jeff Werner, very rightly said that as a leader, only when you are tired speaking of the vision is when people start to understand what the vision is or the purpose. As a leader, you need to keep articulating the purpose, that why are we doing this? Why do we exist a company? The purpose cannot be to make more money. I don't think that can be the purpose. Because if the purpose is to make more money, and if you end up making more money, then people lose interest. What's next? What now? The purpose has to be something more fundamental. And as a leader, you need to keep talking about the purpose every single chance that you get with your employee. Put this on the posters, put this on the presentation, talk to your employees in the town hall meeting so that they know कि हम जो कर रहे हैं वो क्यों कर रहे हैं. Whatever we are trying to do, what are we doing it for? And that has to be kind of talk to them on a daily basis. Let me give you an example of purpose. Okay. Now, a very good example of purpose could be, say, Cafe Coffee Day. The purpose of Cafe Coffee Day, if you have seen written on the Cafe Coffee Day outlets, a lot of coffee. Now, if the steward at Cafe Coffee Day understands that a lot can happen over coffee and he or she knows, then the person will not disturb the customers when they're having a coffee, because they understand that they have ordered a coffee and they are now trying to have a discussion there. Let me just step aside and allow them to have. I don't have to push them, sir, or lenge kya? Would you like to have one more coffee? Would you like to have one more cookie? That clarity of purpose will tell everyone how to behave. So in all organizations, I think as a leader, you need to keep sensitizing your employees about the purpose, not only the newcomers, but also the current people. That's the second aspect. The third aspect is that how do you expand from one product, one market to multiple products in multiple markets? Because what you need to understand is that wherever you started from, you don't have a monopoly. If you show that money can be made this way, there are 10 people who would make money like you, and they will copy you. If there is no patent, there is no legal protection which you have, which means that you cannot remain complacent with that one market, one product. You have to keep improving, you have to keep expanding, and that is how you scale. So you either scale by taking the same product to multiple markets, or you scale by giving multiple products to the same market. A lot of examples we have seen that how, for example, again, the ID Fresh Food went from butter to coffee to parotha to all these things. This Hectare Fresh Foods, which is paperboard, is now called to Chikki and other things. Chai Point, from serving tea, now they're having their own outlets. They're having many things that they are serving along with tea. So I think scaling needs you to innovate with multiple products in multiple markets. So to summarize, the first thing is you need to be moving from people dependency to process dependency. The second thing is communicating the purpose given every single chance. And the third aspect is moving from one product, one market focus to multiple products, multiple markets through innovation. That's how you scale the organization.
Okay, so thanks, Dr. Pawan, for explaining how we can scale up our enterprise, and you have given a lot of examples. So we are at the end of the session, and just my last question is, what is your advice to the budding entrepreneurs and young entrepreneurs? How they should work on their ideas to become successful?
It's a good closing question. So I think as a budding entrepreneur, what you need to ask yourself is, what is unique in me? मेरे में ऐसा खास क्या है? To answer. Now, when you start a company, there are two ways of going about it. One is, what is a trend in the market? What does the market need? And second is, what can I do uniquely? Both are recipes of success. I'm not saying one is better than others. But I believe that if you start a company by asking yourself this question, that what is something which is unique in me, which I can do, which can be my passion, which can be my qualification, my interest area, my hobby, whatever. If you start from that, then you don't get tired. Then don't get bored. Because what is passion? Passion is something that gives you the power to go on when things are against you. That is passion. And when the market is against you, when the competition is heavy on you, if you're not passionate about an idea, then you will say ki chhod kuch aur karte hain. And you will get into that habit. The moment things will become difficult, you will say, let's leave it, let's start something else, try something else. And even that something else you will not do full-heartedly because you're not passionate about it. So as a young entrepreneur, I would like you to ask this question to yourself, that what is something that I'm passionate about? If it is programming, do it. If it is about selling, marketing, designing, talking, traveling, whatever it is, start something with your passion area, because then you have a reason to do it even when things are against you. That's the first thing. The second thing is network. It's very important to develop a network. I'm not talking about network on Facebook. I'm talking of network in person. Go and talk to people, because what I strongly believe, Rahul, is your net worth is your net worth. It does not matter how much money you have or how much money I have. But the fact that you know me and I know you, that is very critical, because with that association, we can touch many more lives. And that's precisely what is happening, isn't it? Right? So you need to develop a professional network with people so that they can give you advice, they can give you credibility, and if you are in a financial distress, they can help you monetarily. So that's the second thing. The first thing is towards it. The second thing is develop a very good professional. And the third thing is to keep yourself updated. Many times I have seen that you start a company, then you are so busy in the company that you lose track of what are the various developments which are happening. You stop reading books, you stop reading newspaper, you stop getting yourself aware about latest developments which are happening. So it's very critical that even though you are a busy person, you should take time to invest in yourself. Invest in yourself physically by being physically fit. Invest in yourself intellectually by reading stuff, talking to people. Invest in yourself spiritually and emotionally by practicing yoga or pranayam or mindfulness, because I think it's very, very critical. Because when you start a company and run a company, you can get really stressed out, because you are the peon of the company and you are the managing director of the company. At the start, you have to do everything. So you can really get stressed out. At that point in time is when you need to develop that mindfulness, that sort of patience, where people can think about the problems and the priorities in a very structured manner. So that's what I think, Rahul, can be the recipe of the startups. That's my view, Rahul.
Thank you, Dr. Soni, for inspiring the young budding entrepreneurs. Definitely, you touched upon all the points, the challenges, the risk involved in entrepreneurship, how they can arrange the finances. And so I am also feeling motivated and inspired by this talk. So thank you. Thank you once again, Dr. Pawan Soni, for sharing your valuable opinion with us. It was a wonderful session. Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure being with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.